The phone call arrives, and everything changes. Maybe it's a health scare, maybe it's a job loss. That moment when the unexpected hits, it's like the floor just drops out. But there's a way to meet it, not with panic, with a kind of steady calm. There's an old method for this, a mental tool. It's called Premeditatio Malorum. The Stoic premeditation of evils. It's not about pessimism. It's a form of strategic optimism. Seneca wrote about it. He said the wise person strengthens themselves. They do it by anticipating what could happen, by seeing it ahead of time. So by the end of this, you'll have a framework, a way to build an inner fortress. So you don't just survive life's disasters, you find strength in them. We'll look at how a simple mental rehearsal works, how response, and why the most resilient people in history considered this practice essential. Think about it. What's the one challenge you hope you never face? Premeditatio Malorum. It gets called morbid pessimism, but the Stoics saw it as practical optimism. That's a real difference. Worry is just a storm of what-ifs. It spins you around. It takes your energy. This practice is a rehearsal, a calm walk through a scenario, not to feel afraid, to feel prepared. They called it a spiritual exercise. Training the mind like an athlete trains the body. The goal wasn't to create fear, it was to disarm it. By meeting a hardship in your imagination first, you take away its surprise. Its power to shock you into paralysis. There's a Stoic distinction here, the dispreferred indifferent. These are events outside our control, things we'd prefer to avoid. Illness, a professional setback, personal conflict. They're indifferent not because they don't matter, but because our well-being, our character, doesn't depend on them happening or not. What matters is how we meet them. Premeditatio Malorum is the tool for that meeting. It lets you examine these things in the cold light of reason, before the emotional heat comes in. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. In his journal, he wrote about expecting to encounter the same follies each day, the same arrogance, the same ingratitude from people. This wasn't cynicism, it was setting expectations rationally. So when he inevitably met those behaviors, he could respond with understanding, not outrage. He was preparing his inner stance. There's an ancient example. Before a sea voyage, a Stoic traveler wouldn't just hope for calm seas. They'd sit and consider the possibility of a storm. A shipwreck, they'd think, if the ship is lost, what then? I will swim to shore if I can. I will find shelter, seek help. The point wasn't to manifest disaster. It was to realize that even within the disaster, their capacity for action remained, their resilience. The fear lost its sting because they'd already lived through its possibility in their mind and found themselves still standing. So think of a common worry in your own life, a difficult conversation you need to have, the stability of your income. Now try shifting the lens. See it not as a looming catastrophe, but as a dispreferred indifferent, an external event you'd rather avoid, but one that doesn't have the final say on your character or your peace. That simple reframe begins to change the weight of it. This mental shift is the first step, a quiet step toward building resilience. It turns the unknown from a monster in the shadows into a map you've already studied. Unexpected events can devastate us. It's often not the event itself, it's the shock of the new thing. Our minds build a picture, a smooth path forward. And when reality violently disagrees with that picture, there's a gap. That gap is where despair lives. It's a chasm you can fall into. Premeditatio Malorum is about building a bridge across that chasm before you need it. It's a form of psychological inoculation. You introduce a small, controlled dose of a difficult idea. You build up antibodies against the full force of panic. This is the core of what the Stoics called negative visualization. It's a cognitive tool, a deliberate mental exercise. You don't just vaguely worry. You calmly walk through the sequence, you see it in detail. If this project fails, what are my next steps? If this conversation sours, how do I keep my composure? The goal isn't to feel the fear, it's to witness your own capacity to respond. You're rehearsing your lines for a play you hope never opens, but if the curtain rises, you're not staring blankly. You know your part. Seneca captured this in his writing on Providence. He wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Think about that power. It's the power of surprise, of confusion, that frozen moment where you don't know what to do. By anticipating, you drain that moment. The event may still happen, but its ability to hijack your reason, to send you into a tailspin, is reduced. You've already met this version of reality in the safe space of your thoughts. Now you meet it in life, and you find you are not a stranger. Consider a modern parallel. A professional has a major presentation to a skeptical board. They could just hope for the best, or they could use this tool. They sit quietly and think, what if my main argument is challenged? What if the technology fails? They don't just see the problem, they see themselves taking a breath, acknowledging the point, pivoting to data. They see themselves calmly switching to a backup plan. They are not visualizing failure, they are visualizing their own calm, competent response to a hurdle. When the day comes, whether it's smooth or rocky, they carry a deep-seated assurance. They've already walked this rocky path in their mind. The real one holds less terror, so think of a past surprise, a setback that knocked you off balance. A sudden expense, an unexpected criticism, a plan that collapsed. In that first moment of shock, how much of your distress came from the event itself? And how much came from the sheer novelty of it, the thought, I never saw this coming? Now ask if you had spent just 5 minutes mentally preparing for that possibility. Not dwelling on it fearfully, but simply acknowledging it as a potential turn in the road. Would the initial blow have felt less devastating? Would you have found your footing just a little bit faster? That is the quiet power of this exercise. It doesn't change the world outside. It changes your point of arrival into that world. This practice fails when you focus on the wrong things. Its power comes from focusing only on your own sphere of control. The Stoics drew a line. They called it the Dichotomy of Control. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Our judgments, our intentions, our desires, our effort, these are within our power. Everything else is not. Our reputation, our health, the weather, not fully ours to command. Epictetus put it bluntly, the chief task in life, he said, is to identify and separate matters, to say clearly which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. That's the foundation. Without it, this mental rehearsal just becomes anxious rumination. You're spinning your wheels on outcomes you can't guarantee. The point isn't to prevent the storm, it's to prepare the captain. It's about strengthening your character, your virtue, your capacity for reasoned choice. Amidst the external chaos, you're not rehearsing the disaster, you're rehearsing your response. Make it practical. Imagine a crucial flight tomorrow. You could spend energy worrying about it being cancelled. That's focusing on an external event, something outside your control. The weather, mechanical issues, airline logistics. Not yours to decide. That worry is exhausting and pointless. Now apply the Stoic filter. Shift your focus to what is up to you. You can rehearse how you'll maintain your composure if the announcement comes. Walk through the steps mentally, calmly approaching the service desk, exploring alternatives, contacting who needs to be contacted. You're rehearsing your patience. Your resourcefulness, your calm. The cancellation may or may not happen, but your fortified character is now a certainty. That's the shift. The rehearsal is always internal. It's about the state you'll cultivate when facing hardship. Will you choose courage over cowardice, fairness over resentment, clear thinking over blind panic? These are the choices within your control. The external event is just the stage. the stage upon which you get to exercise that choice. So take a moment. Think of 3 things that often occupy your worry: a performance review, a family member's health, the stability of a relationship. Now do the simple exercise. Write them down or just hold them in your mind. For each one, ask yourself, what part of this is truly, directly within my control? You'll often find the core of your anxiety is attached to an outcome you can't command. The practice begins when you let that part go and turn your attention instead to the one thing that remains yours, your own stance, your own next right action. In the face of whatever comes, that clarity is what makes this premeditation not a burden but a liberation. The idea is to take philosophy and make it a daily practice. A 5-minute ritual, it's called Premeditatio Malorum. The power isn't in just knowing it, it's in doing it. It's a drill, a kind of mental hygiene. The Stoics would have done this, you can too. The structure is simple, but the effect is deep. First, you pick one challenge, specific and plausible. That's important. Don't start with a catastrophe, start with something common, a dispreferred indifferent, like getting unfair criticism in a meeting. Or an unexpected bill, a minor setback at work, a tense talk with someone close. Pick something that feels real but manageable, that keeps it from becoming anxiety. It roots the practice in real life. Second, you imagine it happening vividly. Close your eyes, see the scene. If it's the criticism, hear the words. Notice the room, feel that first flush of heat. The key isn't to dwell on the event itself. It's to move through it, to get to the most important part. Third, you focus on your response, your virtuous response. This is the whole point. This is where you rehearse your character. How would you respond with courage? Not by shouting, by listening fully, by not shrinking from the discomfort. How would you respond with justice? By looking for a grain of truth in the feedback. By treating the other person fairly, even if you feel wronged. How would you respond with temperance? By regulating that initial surge. By choosing measured words, not reactive ones. How would you respond with wisdom? By assessing what you actually control, your own conduct, and letting go of the rest. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius almost certainly did versions of this every day. It was a philosophical warm-up, a way to align the mind with reality before the day could knock them off course. They weren't waiting for disaster to figure out who they wanted to be. They decided it each morning in the quiet of their thoughts. Take a simple example. Your car won't start on a busy morning. You see the dashboard lights. The engine just clicks. Apply the drill. The event, the broken car, is external. It's already happened. Your virtuous response is what's left. Wisdom guides you to calmly assess. Is it the battery? Do I have roadside assistance? Who can I call? Courage lets you face the inconvenience without complaint, without self-pity. Temperance helps you manage the frustration. To take a deep breath instead of slamming the wheel. Justice might have you consider others, people you made commitments to, and to communicate with them honestly. You walk through the steps mentally, the call, the wait, rescheduling your morning. You see yourself handling it with composure. You've just inoculated yourself against the panic of that moment. So the challenge is this: tomorrow morning, in your first quiet moment, try it. Pick one small, realistic concern for the day ahead. Spend 5 minutes. See it, and then, with deliberate care, rehearse not the problem but your best possible response to it. You're not inviting trouble, you're building an inner sanctuary. So if trouble ever does knock, you're already home and you are already calm. There's this beautiful paradox in the practice. When you regularly think about what you could lose, you start to really see what you already have. That's the gift of perspective. Premeditatio Malorum. When you do it right, it doesn't just prepare you for hardship. It sharpens your appreciation for the ordinary peace you're already living inside. It becomes the foundation for a deep, stoic kind of gratitude. You mentally walk through a scenario where your health falters, and then the simple act of taking a deep breath without pain becomes a small marvel. You imagine a professional setback, and the current stability of your work, however mundane, it gains a new texture. You consider the potential absence of a relationship, and the presence of that person in your life is suddenly illuminated. You're not taking things away, you're removing the veil of familiarity that makes them invisible. You're practicing the art of seeing what's already there. This connects to another Stoic exercise, Memento Mori. Remember you must die. At first glance it sounds grim, but its purpose was identical. It wasn't a morbid fixation. It was a tool for focus, a reminder that time is limited and therefore precious. To remember life is finite is to be shocked into valuing the hour you're currently living. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't dwelling on an end. He was using the idea of an end to clarify what mattered in the present. To strip away pettiness, to choose actions worthy of a limited, precious life. Seneca echoed this. He advised that we should love all of our dear ones, but always with the thought that we have no promise we may keep them forever. He wasn't suggesting we live in fear of loss. He was urging us to love more fully, more attentively, in the clear light of that truth, to not take a single day with them for granted. This is the alchemy of the Stoic mind. It takes the raw material of life's fragility and transforms it into a profound, active appreciation. You can apply this in the most ordinary moments. It takes only a few seconds. Look at the meal in front of you. Before you eat, pause, briefly consider what it would be like to be without it, not to make yourself sad. To make the act of eating conscious and grateful, look around your home. Imagine for just a heartbeat being without this shelter. Then feel the comfort of its walls return to your awareness, not as a given, but as a gift. Listen to the voice of someone you care about. Hear it not as background noise, but as a temporary, irreplaceable sound in the story of your life. This practice turns scarcity into a lens for abundance. By voluntarily touching the idea of without, you stop being a passive consumer of your life and become its active witness. The gratitude that follows isn't a vague feeling. It's a sharp, clear-eyed recognition of a current good. It grounds you firmly in the now. So here's a simple prompt. Pause for just a moment. Name one utterly ordinary thing you are grateful for today. The warmth of this cup in your hands, the functioning of your sight to read these words, the quiet in the room. Name it precisely because it could be otherwise. That recognition is a quiet revolution. It changes the quality of your day. It changes your point of arrival into your own life. And from this place of grounded appreciation, a deeper kind of resilience naturally grows. Our deepest anxieties aren't about never having something. They're about having it and then losing it. That home, that career, that relationship, we hold on tight. And that grip creates a shadow, the fear of the hand opening, the fear of the empty palm. That's where attachment causes a certain kind of suffering. It's this background hum of dread. Premeditatio Malorum speaks directly to that. It doesn't tell you to stop caring. It offers a way to care without being terrorized by change. It attacks the irrational fear by making the potential loss familiar, manageable. Think of it like being in a dark room. You're afraid of what's in the corner. It's paralyzing. Then someone turns on a dim light. You see the shape. It's just a coat on a chair. The fear evaporates, not because the coat is gone, but because the unknown became known. The practice is that dim light. It illuminates the shadowy what if so you can see it for what it is. A possibility, not a monster. By repeatedly, calmly exposing your mind to the idea of loss in the safe space of your thoughts, you desensitize its emotional charge. You take away its power to hijack your present peace. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus gave advice on how to interact with those we love most. He said, when you kiss your child or your partner, remind yourself you are kissing a mortal. That sounds harsh at first, but his point was profound. He wasn't saying don't love them. He was saying love them with clarity. Love them with the full truth of life held gently in your mind. And that truth includes impermanence. By acknowledging it openly, you prevent the fear of it from secretly poisoning your joy. You love more fully because you are not pretending the moment will last forever. You are present for it completely because you know it is fleeting. Apply this to a common modern attachment, the fear of financial ruin, the loss of comfort, status, security. It's a powerful source of anxiety. Now use the practice not to manifest disaster, but to disarm the fear of it. Sit quietly. Walk through the scenario not with panic, but with a problem-solving calm. If my financial situation changed dramatically, what would my first rational steps be? I would assess my true needs: shelter, food, well-being. I would look at my adaptable skills. I would reach out to my network not with shame, but with clarity. The rehearsal isn't about the numbers in an account. It's about discovering the internal resources that no market crash can touch. Your resilience, your capacity for frugality, your ability to learn and adapt, your courage to start again. You mentally touch these qualities within yourself. And in doing so, you realize the foundation of your security was never really the money. It was always those inner traits. The money was just the current expression of them. By rehearsing the loss of the expression, you come face to face with the enduring source. So here's a prompt. Take a quiet moment. Identify one of your greatest attachments. It could be a person, a position, a possession that feels central to your sense of self. Now, consider this not as a morbid exercise, but as an act of courageous clarity. How would rehearsing the idea of its loss in a calm and rational way change your relationship to the fear surrounding it? You might find the fear itself begins to loosen its grip. Not because you care any less, but because you have proven to yourself in advance that you could meet even that reality with the core of who you are intact. And from that place of understanding, a deeper, freer kind of appreciation can finally grow. Stoic acceptance is often misunderstood. People think it means giving up. But it isn't that. It's not about lying down, it's about standing up, mentally prepared, having a plan. There's a big difference between acceptance and resignation. You accept the event itself, the fact it happened. You don't accept a passive response. Your response is what you still own. So Premeditatio Malorum, that rehearsal, it has to end with what you will do. It's a rehearsal for action. Marcus Aurelius knew this. He was an emperor, years on campaign, far from home. He drilled this into his mind. He wrote, in hardship, your job isn't to complain. Your job is to do the duty at hand. Do it with excellence, he said. Don't let the future disturb you. You'll meet it with the same weapons of reason. And the weapon isn't passive endurance. It's active choice applied to the next step. Think of a leader in a crisis. A product fails, bad information comes out. The fatalistic response is to hide, to blame, to hope it passes. The Stoic rehearsal is different. The leader sits down beforehand. They consider, what if our key product has a flaw? They accept that possibility, then they pivot, they rehearse the steps. We will communicate with complete transparency. We will outline the corrective actions. Clearly, no excuses. We will focus on making it right, not protecting our image. They're not rehearsing the shame. They're rehearsing the integrity of the response. The action plan, that's the core of the Stoic citizen, not a detached hermit, an active participant who meets chaos with effort. Your rehearsal should mirror that. When you walk through a hard scenario, don't stop at the problem. Push through to the solution. If you imagine a financial setback, don't just see the empty bank statement. See yourself creating a bare-bones budget, researching new income, reaching out for advice. You're programming your mind to see pathways, not dead ends. Building a reflex that moves from problem to plan. So here's a prompt. Next time you catch yourself worrying, pause. Notice your mental trajectory. Does your mind leap to the catastrophic feeling? The swirl of dread, or does it jump, even instinctively, toward solutions? This practice trains a solution-focused mind. It redirects that energy from the emotional sinkhole into the workshop of action. It asks, given this reality I can't change, what's the first small right thing I can do? The answer to that is where your power resides, and that power is what you rehearse. In 41 AD, Seneca was exiled to Corsica, a remote island. Harsh, this was the test. The philosopher who wrote about anticipating misfortune was now living it. He lost his position in Rome. He was separated from his family, from the intellectual life he loved, sent to a barren outpost. If there was ever a moment for despair, this was it. Yet from that isolation, he wrote one of his most powerful works, The Consolation to Helvia, a letter to his mother. It's a masterclass in applied Stoicism. He hadn't just written about Premeditatio Malorum, he had practiced it. Long before the emperor's sentence, he had mentally rehearsed it, the loss of status, the loss of comfort and home, so when it happened, his mind didn't break. It had a blueprint. In the letter, he consoles his mother, not by minimizing the hardship, but by reframing it. He argues that exile can't truly harm a person because our essential goods are internal. A wise person carries their goods within them. The mind, he writes, is the one thing fortune cannot take. It makes its own freedom, and he describes Corsica not as a prison but as a place of profound quiet, a chance to study nature and the self without distraction. He had prepared for the external event so he could focus on his internal response. This is the proof. The mental rehearsal let him meet a crushing blow not as a victim but as a philosopher. He transformed the sentence from a punishment into a subject for his own inquiry, now a modern parallel, a sudden corporate downsizing, a forced relocation for a partner's job, an unexpected rejection from a community you valued. These are our contemporary exiles. They feel like banishment from a world we understood. The initial shock is real. But the Stoic question following Seneca is this: what if this exile, however painful, also contains a space, a clearing? When the familiar path is blocked, we are sometimes forced to look inward, to discover resources we never knew we had. The person who loses a job might, in that empty space, finally explore a latent skill or a long dormant passion. The one who moves to an unfamiliar city might shed old social roles and build an identity more aligned with their true values. The key shift is from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What can I build within this new reality? What inner goods can I attend to now that were drowned out by the noise before?" So reflect on a past personal exile, a time you felt cast out from a situation that defined you. A rejection, a loss, a sudden change that left you disoriented. With the clarity of hindsight, can you see any hidden opportunity that space eventually created? Maybe a resilience you didn't know you possessed, a new direction that only became visible when the old road vanished. Seneca's exile didn't last forever. He was recalled to Rome, but he returned not as a man broken by hardship, but as one tempered by it. His writings from that period remain, not as records of suffering, but as maps of liberation. They remind us that the most formidable prison is often the one we build in our own minds, and the rehearsal of difficulty is the key that can unlock the door. Modern psychology has caught up with something the Stoics understood. Rehearsing difficulty in a controlled way, it builds resilience. That's not just philosophy now, it's a validated tool. Stress inoculation training, that's the modern term. The principle is simple. You expose yourself to manageable stress in a safe space, and you build up a kind of psychological immune system. So when real pressure comes, you're less reactive, more capable. It's the same mechanism as a fire drill. Nobody runs a fire drill to cause panic. They do it so that if the alarm ever sounds, the body knows what to do. And the mind follows. Movement becomes calm, directed, automatic. The Stoic practice of mental rehearsal, that's a fire drill for the soul. In many ways, the Stoics were early cognitive therapists. They understood a core truth that's now the bedrock of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not events that disturb us, it's our judgments about those events. Our thoughts shape our emotional reality, and Premeditatio Malorum is a structured way to examine those judgments ahead of time, to change them. When you calmly walk through a potential hardship, you're challenging the catastrophic story your mind might spin. You replace a judgment like "this would destroy me" with something more rational. "This would be difficult, and here's how I could navigate it." You're rehearsing not just the action, but the healthier thought pattern that makes the action possible. Look at high performance in any field. Elite athletes, they don't just visualize winning, they spend equal time visualizing how they'll handle a setback. A missed shot, a bad call, a sudden shift in the weather. They mentally practice maintaining focus, regulating frustration, sticking to their strategy in the chaos. This isn't negative thinking, it's comprehensive preparation. It ensures that when the unexpected happens in competition, it doesn't hijack their performance. Their response is already part of their toolkit. The pressure of the moment activates a rehearsed protocol, not a raw panic, and this principle scales to everyday life. A public speaker might mentally practice handling a distracting noise or a tough question from the audience. A parent might rehearse staying calm during a teenager's emotional outburst instead of being pulled into the storm. In each case, the rehearsal creates a buffer between the stimulus and the reaction. It builds a mental muscle memory for composure. So here's a practical step. Look at your own life. Identify one area where anxiety tends to flare. Maybe it's financial uncertainty or social conflict, a fear of professional embarrassment. Now design a simple mental fire drill for it, not a long, drawn-out worry session, a focused 5-minute rehearsal. Walk through the scenario calmly. See the challenge arise, and then, most importantly, watch yourself enact your chosen response. See yourself breathing, thinking, taking that first practical step. You're programming your nervous system. You're telling your brain, this is not an emergency. This is a situation I am prepared to manage. That small act of mental preparation, it does more than just ease future anxiety. It actively constructs the resilient person you will become when that future arrives. There's a line between rehearsing something strategically and just ruminating in a toxic way. The tool itself is powerful, but it can be misused. If you finish a mental exercise and you feel more anxious, you've probably crossed that line. Premeditatio Malorum is a focused drill. Rumination is a runaway train. The difference isn't really the topic. It's in the structure, the intent, and especially the end point. Rehearsal has a time limit. It's purposeful. You set a boundary, maybe 5 minutes. You start with a clear question. If this thing I don't want happens, what's my virtuous response? You walk through the sequence calmly, focusing on your own agency, your own choices within your control. And then you consciously conclude. You bring your attention back to the present. You might even state a simple affirmation, I am prepared, then you move on. The exercise has a beginning, a middle, and a deliberate end. Rumination doesn't have an off switch. It's open-ended, it's passive. The mind fixates on the horror of the problem itself, not on your response. It just loops through variations of what if, each one worse than the last. It focuses only on the external event, the thing outside your control, and that reinforces a sense of helplessness. This isn't preparation, it's a form of psychological self-harm. It drains your energy, clouds your judgment, and leaves you less capable of handling the very thing you fear. This is where the Stoic dichotomy of control acts as a guardrail. Epictetus gave a reminder. He said, don't be disturbed by the mere impression of a thing, by how it looks at first glance. Instead, stop and ask, is this within my power? If it's not, be ready to say, this is nothing to me. That question is the interrupter. It's the moment you step off the rumination treadmill. When your mind starts spinning on an outcome you can't command, you gently guide it back. This is external. My peace doesn't depend on this happening or not. My task is to prepare my inner stance. Consider a practical contrast. Imagine you have a difficult conversation scheduled. The Stoic rehearsal takes 2 minutes in the morning. You sit quietly, you envision the other person becoming defensive. You see yourself pausing, listening fully, responding with calm, clear words aimed at understanding, not winning. You feel your breath steady, you conclude, you're now mentally equipped. The obsessive rumination looks different. It happens sporadically all day. In the shower, you fret over their possible tone. During lunch, you imagine them storming out. You draft angry retorts in your head. You're focused entirely on their reaction, a thing you can't control. You exhaust yourself before the conversation even begins. So here's a prompt. Next time you catch yourself in a cycle of worry, pause. Ask a simple diagnostic question. Is this a rehearsal or a rumination? Check the parameters. Am I focused on my response or am I trapped in the problem? Am I setting a time limit or is this looping endlessly? Is this leaving me feeling more resolute or more drained? The answer tells you everything. Use the dichotomy as your compass. If your mind is stuck on an external, acknowledge it. This is not mine to decide. Then, with kindness, redirect your mental energy back to the only ground you can truly stand on, the character you choose to cultivate right here, right now. That redirection is the practice. It turns anxiety into architecture, building a mind that's prepared, not paralyzed. The Stoics would sometimes invite small hardships. They'd bring in a little discomfort on purpose, just to prove something to themselves. That's voluntary discomfort. It's the physical version of that mental exercise, Premeditatio Malorum. If mental rehearsal is like studying a map of rough terrain, this is like taking a short hike in similar weather. You build a kind of muscle memory for endurance. The idea of a bigger challenge becomes less abstract, less intimidating because you have recent proof, tangible proof, that you can handle more than you thought. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to demonstrate in a controlled way that your comfort isn't your master. You can step outside its boundaries and still be whole. That removes the terror from future discomforts. You've already met a cousin of that feeling, on your own terms, and you walked through it. The philosopher Musonius Rufus advocated for this. He taught that practicing poverty, deliberately living with less, was a way to disarm fortune. He said we should periodically use cheaper food, wear simpler clothing, live in plainer shelter, not because those things are better, but to train the understanding that a good life is possible without luxury, to prove to yourself your happiness isn't held hostage by your possessions. Seneca echoed this. He advised setting aside days each month to live on the most basic food and rough clothing. He wrote, "Ask yourself, is this the condition I so feared?" And you'll find peace of mind begins on that day. The fear of loss loses its grip when you voluntarily touch the thing you're afraid of losing and discover you're still yourself. This translates into simple, modern applications. It's not extreme asceticism. It's small, intentional choices that stretch your tolerance, taking a cold shower for the final 30 seconds. Walking home a longer, less convenient route, skipping a meal intentionally, not from necessity but to observe the sensation of hunger without panic. Choosing to sit with a minor inconvenience, a slow internet connection, a delayed train without reaching for your phone to numb the frustration. In each case, you're running a live experiment. You are the scientist and the subject. The question you're answering is, can I endure this? And the quiet, confident yes that follows is a deposit in your resilience bank. So consider a small, voluntary discomfort you could introduce this week, one that feels manageable but meaningful, maybe leaving your coat behind on a mildly chilly day. Or turning off the entertainment during a routine chore and just doing the chore, or committing to a digital sunset an hour earlier than usual. The point isn't to punish yourself. It's to build confidence, to whisper to your deeper mind, see, we are okay even here, we are capable. Then when you sit down to mentally rehearse a larger life challenge, that rehearsal carries more weight. It's no longer just a theoretical exercise. It's backed by the lived experience of your own chosen fortitude. You have evidence, and with that evidence, the architecture of your inner resilience grows. A little stronger, a little more real. Our deepest wounds tend to come from the people closest to us, and Premeditatio Malorum can arm your heart with a certain understanding. This isn't about expecting the worst from people. It's about preparing the best in yourself for the inevitable friction that comes with human connection. We invest so much in our relationships, and that investment makes us vulnerable. A careless word from a stranger might just bounce off, but the same word from a partner or a parent can cut deep. So the Stoic practice here is a form of emotional preparedness. It's rehearsing your inner stance so that when friction comes, you respond from a place of principle, not a raw reaction. You focus on the one thing you truly own in any interaction, which is your own conduct. Marcus Aurelius filled his personal journal with this exact work. He wrote about preparing each morning to meet people who would be arrogant, ungrateful, deceitful. That rehearsal wasn't to become cynical. It was to fortify his own kindness. He reminded himself, I cannot be angry with my brother or sister, for we are made for cooperation. To feel anger is to forget our shared nature. He was programming his default response. So when offended, he would choose understanding over outrage. That mental rehearsal allowed him to lead an empire without being consumed by all the pettiness around him. He controlled his inner world so the outer chaos couldn't dictate his character. You can apply this to a common, modern friction. Your partner forgets an important date. An anniversary, maybe. The first flash is hurt, maybe even anger, and the story your mind spins is one of neglect, of not being valued. Now you pause. You rehearse the Stoic response beforehand. The event, the forgotten date, is external. It's already happened. Your reaction is what remains yours to shape. So you walk through it mentally, you feel that initial sting, and then you see yourself taking a breath. You choose to ask with genuine curiosity, not accusation. Was your day overwhelming? You give space for an explanation. You focus on the pattern of the relationship, not the single lapse. You communicate your feelings using I statements, not you accusations. You might say, I felt a bit sad when I realized the date had passed, because celebrating our time together matters to me. This rehearsal isn't about excusing thoughtlessness. It's about ensuring your response builds connection rather than breeding resentment. You're practicing the virtue of patience, of measured justice, of temperance with your tongue. This practice extends even further to the Stoic reminder of mortality within relationships, remembering that our time with those we love is fine. It isn't meant to breed a morbid anxiety. It's meant to sharpen our appreciation and patience right now. If you knew a conversation with someone might be your last, would you choose to be right or to be kind? Would you hold onto a grudge or would you seek understanding? Premeditatio Malorum invites that question into the present moment. It asks you to rehearse not only for conflict, but for the potential of loss. By touching that possibility gently in your thoughts, you're far more likely to cherish the ordinary moments you have. You speak with more care. You listen with more presence. You forgive minor irritations with more grace because you see them against the backdrop of a limited, precious shared story. So think of a recurring, minor conflict in one of your important relationships. Maybe it's a family member who always gives unsolicited advice, or a friend who is chronically late. Now, design a brief mental rehearsal for the next time it occurs. Don't rehearse your frustration, rehearse your virtuous response. See yourself meeting their behavior with a calm, compassionate reply, one that defends your peace without attacking their character. This small act of preparation does something. It transforms a potential battlefield into ground for growth. It ensures that when your heart is on the line, your mind is already home and already steady. Financial anxiety is everywhere now. The Stoics had a way to deal with it. You separate who you are from what you have. We attach so much to a bank balance. Our identity, our security, our whole idea of a good life, and that's a fragile way to live. Markets change, jobs disappear, costs come out of nowhere. The fear isn't just about the money, it's about losing a piece of yourself. There's this exercise, Premeditatio Malorum. You practice losing financial comfort. Not to make it happen, but to see what's left when it's gone. You find your character, your ability to adapt, finding joy in simple things. Those are the real assets. And they can't be taken away. Seneca talked about this. He said wealth is a slave to the wise and a master to the fool. For a wise person, money is a tool. Useful, preferable, but not essential. Not for their peace, not for their virtue. For a fool, it becomes the master. Their mood goes up and down with the market. Their self-respect depends on what they own. Every decision comes from fear of loss. The Stoic practice tries to move you from one category to the other. To make wealth a servant, not a tyrant. So you try the exercise, find a quiet moment. Imagine a real financial hit, a bad investment, losing a job, watching your savings drop. Then walk through it with calm, skip the panic, go straight to the response. See yourself sitting down, not in despair, but assessing things clearly. You make a bare-bones budget, needs from wants, with total clarity. You reach out to your network, not with shame, but with honest pragmatism, looking for advice, for leads. You look at skills you've ignored, paths you never considered. You practice finding satisfaction in cheap things, a long walk, a library book, a good conversation. The point of the rehearsal is to prove something to yourself ahead of time, that you have a plan. More than that, you have a self that can carry it out. That your dignity isn't kept in a vault. Doing this changes your decisions now. Once you've mentally lived through a downturn and seen your own resilience, the fear softens. You're less likely to make impulsive, scared investments. You save more prudently, not from scarcity but from preparation. You spend more intentionally. Knowing each purchase is a choice about what you value, not a reflex, and that leads to a basic Stoic question, one that can change your whole relationship with money. What does enough mean? Not a dollar amount, a state of being. Is it security, freedom from certain worries, the ability to provide or to contribute? Define enough by the life it supports, not the number. For a Stoic, enough is when your basic needs are met and your mind is free to pursue virtue. Everything beyond that is a bonus, a tool to use well, but not a necessity. So here's a challenge. Sometime today, pause, ask yourself that question. What is my personal enough? Write it down. See if it's tied to safety or autonomy or generosity. Then think, how would rehearsing the loss of everything beyond that enough change your current anxiety? You might find the ground feels more solid, not because it's covered in gold, but because you've learned to stand on it just as it is. The Stoics didn't look away from death. They looked right at it to take its power away and to make life feel more alive. That's the final place you take the practice of Premeditatio Malorum. Turning your mind toward your own death, or the chance of losing the people closest to you. It's the deepest use of it, the hardest one, not because it's dark, but because it goes right to the center of what you care about. They called this Memento Mori. For them, it wasn't about fear. It was a tool, a way to get clear. To see past all the noise of everyday life and notice what actually matters. By choosing to face the fact that life ends, they wanted to pull the fear out of it. And use that fact to create a kind of urgency. Not an urgency for frantic experiences, but for doing what's right. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this in his private notes. He didn't write about the end with dread. He wrote with a calm, almost detached acceptance. He told himself that death is a natural process, just as much a part of nature as being born. Or a leaf falling. To fight against it, he said, is to fight against the whole order of the world. He wrote that you could leave life right now, and you should let that decide what you do. What you say and think, that line isn't a threat, it's a direction for focus. It asks, if this day actually mattered in the story of your life, how would you use it? Would you fill it with small complaints, with distraction, or with something that matches your deepest sense of what is good? Seneca came at it from the side of time. In his letter on the shortness of life, he argued that life isn't short. We make it short, we waste it, we lose it to worrying about the future or regretting the past. We give it away to pointless things and to other people's demands. For Seneca, remembering death was the fix for that waste. It's the ultimate filter for what matters. When you keep the reality of a limit in your mind, the unimportant stuff just falls away. You stop putting off the conversations that count. You stop putting up with behaviors that eat away at you. You start to invest your hours, not just spend them. So how do you actually do this without getting anxious? The key is how you frame it. It's not about making some dramatic list of amazing experiences to have. It's about alignment. There's a simple writing exercise. Every so often, maybe once a season, you sit with a blank page and you ask yourself one question. If I knew for sure I had 1 year left to live, how would I change what I focus on? Not for some final, frantic rush, but to make sure my days actually showed my real values. The answers that come up usually aren't about skydiving or trips. They almost always turn inward toward connection. They sound like, I'd be kinder in how I speak. I'd listen more patiently. I'd spend more quiet time outside. I'd finally write that thank you letter. I'd let go of that old grudge. I'd start that creative project I keep delaying. The exercise shows you the space between what you do every day and the life you say you want. And that space is where you can start to build today. That's the vitalizing part of the practice. It uses the thought of an end to light up the path you're on right now. It asks you to live not like you have all the time in the world, but like your time is valuable and has a point. So here's something to sit with. If you knew you would die in a year, what would you start doing differently today? What one small thing would you do tomorrow that respects that deeper priority? And just as important, what would you stop doing? What habit, what commitment, what way of thinking would you finally drop because you see it for what it is? Something that steals your limited, irreplaceable days. The answers aren't a life sentence, they're a compass. Resilience isn't just something you have on your own. It's something a group has. How do you make a group that doesn't break under pressure? We think of Stoicism as something you do alone, a quiet inner practice, but the goal was always to create better citizens, people who could contribute to the common good. And that needs a community that can weather storms together. That exercise, Premeditatio Malorum, the mental rehearsal, it doesn't have to be private. It can be shared. A family, a team, friends can sit down and calmly ask, what if, and then plan together. Not just for survival, but for a response that's dignified, that's cohesive. That builds something more than a plan. It builds trust. It sets up shared protocols for when emotions run high. It stops the kind of panic that splits a group from the inside. The Stoic idea of cosmopolitanism, seeing yourself as a citizen of the world, it points to this. Caring for the common welfare starts with strengthening the small communities you're part of. A resilient person lifts up the people around them, and a resilient group creates a space where everyone can find their strength. Think about a business team facing a high-stakes deadline. The usual way is to hope everything goes smoothly. A team using Stoic thinking would do something different. In a planning meeting, they'd set aside time. A calm, open discussion of what could go wrong. What if our main supplier fails? What if a key person gets sick? The point isn't to assign blame or create fear. It's to brainstorm calm, virtuous responses together. Who leads communication? What are our backup resources? How do we support each other to stay focused and fair under stress? This process does two things. It creates a practical playbook, but more importantly, it aligns the team's mindset. Everyone knows challenges aren't surprises to be met with blame. They're possibilities the group has already considered and is prepared to navigate together. That shared psychological preparation is a kind of social glue. This works powerfully for families. A family meeting to talk about what-if scenarios. It can be an act of care, not alarm, sitting together to calmly talk through a potential natural event, or a possible job loss or a health challenge. The goal isn't to scare children or dwell on the dark. It's to focus on practical plans and mutual support. Where do we meet if we're separated? What are our most important contacts? How can we help each other feel safe? This turns anxiety from a silent, isolating fear into a shared responsibility. Something you face with clear eyes and connected hearts. It teaches younger members by example that difficulty is met with preparation and unity, not with helplessness. It reinforces that no one faces hardship alone, so think of one group you're part of, your household, your work team, a volunteer group, a close circle of friends. And consider how a calm, preemptive discussion of a potential challenge might strengthen that group. You don't need a formal agenda. It could start with a simple, honest question over a meal or in a regular meeting. If we faced a big setback as a group, what would our first best steps be? To support each other and find our way forward. The very act of asking that question, in a spirit of collective strength, starts to build the architecture of a community. One that doesn't just endure but holds each other up, and from that foundation, a different kind of strength grows, one that's far greater than the sum of its parts. For a Stoic, a disaster isn't just something to get through, it's a field, a place where virtue can actually shine its brightest. That's the real elevation of the practice. When you've already walked through the hardship in your mind, when you've disarmed the shock, what's left is a remarkable clarity, and in that clarity, you don't just see how to endure. You start to see possibilities. The obstacle that seemed to block your path can become the path itself. Marcus Aurelius captured it. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. That's the heart of it. It's not positive thinking. It's a practical reorientation. The barrier is no longer an enemy to rage against. It's the raw material for your next move. It's the question your character gets to answer. History is filled with people who lived this. They didn't seek catastrophe. But when it found them, they used it. Stephen Hawking's diagnosis could have been a full stop. Instead, it forced a profound shift in how he worked, how he communicated. And that led to groundbreaking insights about the universe, conveyed with a clarity that captivated millions. J.K. Rowling has spoken about a period of profound difficulty. She described it as a stripping away of the inessential. It allowed her to focus entirely on the story she needed to tell. In each case, the crisis removed distractions. It burned away options. It forced a focus on what was truly essential, on the core of their talent and purpose. The disaster became the forge. You see it in smaller stories, too. An entrepreneur's first business fails. That failure, if met with a prepared mind, isn't just a loss. It's a masterclass. It teaches lessons about the market, about their own strengths, about partnership, lessons no business school ever could. The next venture is built not on naive hope but on hard-won wisdom. It's often stronger, more resilient, more aligned, or someone facing a serious health challenge. In navigating that, they often discover a depth of personal strength they never knew. They learn to advocate for themselves, they connect with a community, and sometimes that experience ignites a passion to help, to raise awareness, to turn personal hardship into a purpose that supports others. The crisis didn't create their compassion or courage, it revealed it. It provided the arena for it to act. This shift changes everything about how you approach difficulty. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" You start asking, "What does this make possible?" What new form of courage can I practice here? What forgotten resilience can I call upon? Where is there a need for leadership, even if it's just leading yourself through one difficult day? The prepared mind looks at the rubble and doesn't just see wreckage. It sees the stones with which to start building anew. So take a moment, look back at a past failure, a setback, a crisis you've moved through. With hindsight, can you identify one positive skill that emerged? One crucial insight or one new direction? Maybe it was patience or the ability to ask for help. Maybe it was the realization that a certain path wasn't for you, clearing the way for one that was. That positive element, however small, is the proof. It's the evidence that within the hardship, something was growing. Your practice of mental preparation is about making that growth conscious, intentional, so that when the next challenge arrives, you're not just ready to survive it, you're poised to find the way within it. Stoicism isn't magic. It won't make you emotionless, it won't stop all pain. We should be clear about its limits. Premeditatio Malorum is a powerful tool, but it has a specific job. It doesn't promise to shield you from the initial sting, the raw hit of life's hardest moments. It won't stop grief from arriving. It can't silence the shock of a sudden loss, or numb the reality of physical pain. Its power works in a different space. It operates on the layer that comes after the impact, the panic, the spiraling despair. The frozen confusion. That secondary storm is where this practice does its work. It prepares the rational mind to take over more quickly, to move from being overwhelmed to a clear-eyed response. Seneca acknowledged this distinction. He wrote that even the wise person will feel a sting, a pang of grief, a flash of fear, but they won't permit that sting to become a festering wound. They feel the pain, but they refuse the added torment, the self-inflicted, prolonged suffering. You can see this difference in two people getting difficult news. Imagine two individuals in a doctor's office, hearing the same challenging diagnosis. The first person is devastated. The news hits like a physical blow. They're paralyzed by it. Their mind floods with catastrophic images, with a sense of finality. They can't formulate a question. They can't hear the next thing said. They're lost in the shock. The second person is equally saddened, shaken by the news, but they have a different internal architecture. Because of mental preparation, the shock doesn't have the same power to hijack their entire being. They feel the deep sadness, the fear, the sting is real, but within moments their trained mind begins to engage. They take a breath. They ask a clear, practical question about treatment. They focus on the next step, however small. The first person is consumed by both the pain and the suffering. The second meets the pain, but works to minimize the unnecessary suffering that could follow. That's the crucial limit to understand. The practice doesn't remove the feeling. It fortifies the space around the feeling, so it doesn't flood the entire landscape of your mind. It builds a levee, not a dam. The emotion will still flow, but it's less likely to cause a catastrophic breach. So in your own experiences, can you identify the difference? Pain is the inevitable, direct experience, the sadness of a goodbye, the anxiety before a big event, the fatigue after a long struggle. Suffering is the optional layer we often add. It's the story we tell ourselves about the pain, the rumination on how unfair it is, the projection of a terrible future, the guilt over the past. The Stoic rehearsal aims to shrink that second category, to help you meet the pain of life with clarity, so you spend less time lost in the thicket of your own suffering. This honest boundary isn't a weakness. It's the practice's precise strength. It tells you exactly what to expect, so you can use it for what it was truly designed to do. Premeditatio Malorum is a tool. It's part of a larger system. Stoicism isn't just one trick, it's a whole way of living. These practices work together. They build resilience from different sides. It's like building a house. Premeditatio is the foundation. It's for the coming storms, but you need walls, you need a roof. That's the other exercises. They create a shelter for your mind, a shelter that can handle any weather. The goal is to integrate them, to weave these threads into a stronger fabric for daily life. There's the evening review, a classic Stoic exercise. You look back at the end of the day. You look with calm detachment. You ask what went well. You ask where you fell short of your principles. How you could have shown more courage or more wisdom. Now bring premeditatio into that. In your review, you can assess your mental preparation. Did a challenge come up that you rehearsed? How did your real response compare to the virtuous one you imagined? If something new caught you off guard, that's data. That becomes the seed for tomorrow's premeditation. The evening review turns experience into fuel. It closes the loop. Then there's journaling. It's not just a diary of events. For a Stoic, it's a workshop. It's where you script your ideal responses. You take a feared scenario, you write through it, not as a worried rant, as a calm narrative of virtuous action. You describe the event, then you describe in detail your best possible self navigating it. This written rehearsal deepens the mental one. It makes the neural pathways stronger. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the example. It wasn't for publication. It was his personal journal. Page after page shows him integrating reflection. Premeditation of hardships, direct self-admonition to live by his virtues. He used his journal to practice everything at once. All these exercises feed one aim: cultivating the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. Premeditatio Malorum is a training ground for all four. In your mental rehearsal, you exercise wisdom by seeing clearly. You practice courage by facing it without flinching. You enact justice by considering fair treatment of others. You employ temperance by regulating your imagined reactions. The evening review then measures your progress in these virtues. Journaling helps you articulate and refine them. They're different doors into the same room. Here's a simple practice to try. Tonight, during your evening review, ask 2 questions. First, what unexpected event today could I have been better prepared for? Just note it. Second, write a brief journal entry for tomorrow. Choose one potential challenge, a difficult conversation, a high-pressure task. Script your virtuous response. Write it as if you're watching your future self handle it with composure, with principle. Tomorrow, after the day is done, review that entry. See how reality compared. This cycle creates a feedback loop: premeditation, action, and review, so a reflective prompt. Looking at the broader Stoic practices, the evening review, dedicated journaling, mindfulness, a daily focus on virtue. Which one feels like it would most naturally complement your use of premeditatio? Is it the structure of a journal to script responses, or the reflective pause of an evening review to integrate lessons? There's no single right answer. The synergy begins when you connect one practice to another, building your own architecture of resilience. Over time, this practice doesn't just build resilience. It can make you antifragile, someone who grows stronger from the shocks that would break other people. That's the modern term for it, the ultimate outcome of this kind of Stoic work. You can think of 3 categories. Fragile things break under stress. A glass shatters when it's dropped. Robust things withstand stress. A sturdy table holds weight and doesn't get damaged. But antifragile things improve because of stress. Your immune system, when it faces manageable challenges, builds stronger defenses. Your bones, under the stress of weight-bearing exercise, increase in density. The system doesn't just endure disorder. It requires disorder to become stronger. That's the long-term transformation of a consistent Stoic practice. Premeditatio Malorum, you're not just building a wall to keep chaos out. You're training your character to metabolize chaos, to use it as fuel. The Stoics were pointing to this idea long before we had the word for it. That core insight, the obstacle is the way, that's a blueprint for antifragility. The obstacle isn't a nuisance to avoid. It's the necessary friction that sharpens your virtue. That forces clarity, that reveals your capacity. When you regularly challenge your mental models through calm rehearsal, you're stressing your psychological framework in a controlled way. Just like a muscle stressed by exercise grows back stronger, your character, stressed by these mental rehearsals, develops greater tensile strength. You're inoculating your mind not just against panic, but against stagnation. A fragile character is built on an assumption that life should be smooth, that hardship is a mistake, an interruption to the real plan, and when that assumption is shattered by reality, the person shatters with it. An antifragile character is built on a different foundation. It understands that volatility and randomness and challenge aren't bugs in the system, they are the system. They are the very conditions for growth. So the practice of mentally walking through difficulty is the controlled exposure that builds this quality. You introduce small, manageable doses of mental and emotional stress. And in doing that, you trigger an adaptation. Your capacity for courage expands, your repository of calm deepens, your ability to find the way within the obstacle becomes second nature. You can see a practical example in nature, forest fires. They're devastating in the moment, but they clear out dense undergrowth. They allow certain pine cones to open and release their seeds. Over time, the ecosystem becomes more resilient and diverse because of the periodic fire. The system is antifragile to that specific stressor. Your mind can develop the same relationship with life's fires. By rehearsing them, you clear out the mental undergrowth of naive assumptions. You create the conditions for new growth, for stronger principles to take root. So here's a reflective prompt. Look at one area of your life, your career, a key relationship, your personal health management. Would you describe your current stance in that area as fragile, robust, or antifragile? Does a setback there threaten to break your spirit? Does it leave you unchanged, or does it somehow, even in a small way, make you wiser and more capable? Now, based on that, what's one small mental stressor you could introduce? One controlled challenge to your assumptions in that area? It might be having that difficult conversation you've rehearsed. It might be voluntarily taking on a project that stretches your skills. It might be spending 5 minutes each morning contemplating a potential loss. Not to fear it, but to familiarize yourself with the landscape of your own resilience. That small step is how you move the needle, from hoping the wind never blows to building a sail. The Stoics had a name for it, a system, but this idea, preparing your mind for hardship that shows up everywhere, across cultures, across time, it's a human impulse. To look at difficulty before it gets here, it's not just one philosophy, it's something people have always understood about building strength. There's an old Norse idea. The Ragnarok mindset, their myths tell of a final battle, inevitable, even the gods will fall, but the heroes in those stories, they're not hiding, they're preparing. Sharpening swords, gathering courage, knowing the fight is coming, and the honor is in how you face it, not in surviving. The virtue was in the stance. Meeting fate with clear eyes, a steady heart, it's not about the end itself. It's about the dignity in how you respond to what you know is coming. Buddhism walks a similar path. With a contemplation of impermanence, reflecting on how everything changes, our bodies, relationships, things we own, that reflection isn't meant to create despair. It's a deliberate practice to loosen attachment, to see clearly that change is the fundamental rule, and by touching that truth in meditation again and again, the goal is to reduce suffering. The suffering that comes from clinging to what can't last. The goal is acceptance, a kind of freedom, making peace with loss inside your own mind first. The vocabulary is different, but the mind is being trained for the same thing, to meet reality without being shattered by it. Then there are the old stories. The foundational ones where the hero goes on a descent into a dark forest to the underworld, a period of exile or trial. Those aren't just adventures. They're maps for the psyche. They teach that to come back stronger, to gain wisdom, to bring something back for your people, you have to go into the darkness first. Voluntarily, you have to face it, the possibility of failure, of fear, of the unknown. And by facing it, you integrate it, you learn its lessons, you return transformed. Not just unscathed, changed. The Stoic exercise the mental rehearsal that's a personal version of that descent. You go into the cave of your fears in your imagination. So you can come out with resilience. That's the treasure. Seeing this thread is important. It takes Premeditatio Malorum out of being just an ancient ritual. It puts it inside a fundamental human wisdom. The Stoics didn't invent the idea that life is hard. They observed it. They took insights from earlier thinkers. And they built a practical manual, a structured, repeatable exercise for a challenge every culture faces: how to live well in a world you can't fully control. Seeing it that way makes it feel less foreign, more like tapping into a deep well, a shared human understanding. So you might think about this beyond Stoicism. Is there a tradition in your background, a family saying, an old story, something that teaches about preparing for hard times? It could be a grandparent's advice. Save for a rainy day. That's a financial form of this premeditation. It could be a spiritual teaching about humility before forces greater than us. Or a folk tale about the character who thinks 3 steps ahead. These echoes are everywhere, and noticing them, it's a reminder. You're not alone in looking for this kind of strength. You're part of a very old conversation about how to stand firm when the winds begin to blow. You might think this is just asking for trouble. Let's take that on directly. The main pushback is pretty straightforward. Isn't this negative thinking? And the Stoic position is no. It's actually the opposite of just sitting in negativity. Negative thinking is when you're stuck spinning on a problem you can't do anything about. It's a helpless kind of worry. Premeditatio Malorum is an active exercise. It's about focusing on what you actually can control, your response. It's rehearsing your own agency. Worry asks, what if this terrible thing happens and I can't handle it? The practice shows, if this thing happens, here's exactly how I will handle it. One is giving in to fear. The other is stating your own self-trust. Then there's this idea of attracting bad energy. The thought that by considering something, you're somehow calling it into existence. From a Stoic view, that's mixing up the map with the actual territory. Reading a flight safety card doesn't make the plane malfunction. In fact, it makes a safe outcome more likely because everyone is prepared. That mental rehearsal is the safety card for your mind. You aren't wishing for turbulence. You're making sure that if it comes, you know where the exits are. Your calm preparedness doesn't attract chaos, it contains it. Some people say the practice is depressing, that dwelling on potential loss has to ruin the present, but the actual experience of people who do it points the other way. By willingly touching the idea of loss in a controlled manner, you take away its power to haunt you. You aren't dwelling, you're visiting briefly with a purpose. And what often comes after that visit is a sharp, vivid appreciation for what you have right now. The gratitude that comes from this isn't shallow, it's earned. It's the gratitude of someone who knows the value of what they hold, not because they were told to be thankful, but because they've honestly considered its absence. The feeling that results isn't depression, it's a deep, quiet relief. The anxiety about losing things actually goes down because you've already faced the possibility and found your footing. Seneca had a direct argument against these criticisms. He wrote that we should anticipate not just what commonly happens, but what's possible, because foreseeing any event stops it from surprising us. He called it a form of safeguarding. To refuse to think about what could happen, he suggested, isn't optimism. It's a kind of negligence. It's like a ship's captain refusing to check the weather because they only want to think about sunny skies. The responsible captain prepares for all conditions. That preparation doesn't create the storm. It creates the capable captain. Think of a simple, modern comparison. A parent teaching a child to swim doesn't attract the danger of drowning by talking about water safety. They reduce it. They say, if you get tired, roll onto your back and float. If someone's in trouble, call for help, don't jump in. That conversation isn't morbid, it's empowering. It trades a small amount of sober knowledge for a large amount of vague fear. The child is more confident now, not more afraid, because they have a plan. Your mental rehearsal does the same thing for your adult life. It's the water safety talk you have with yourself. So here's something to consider. What's your own biggest hesitation about this practice? Is it the fear it feels too dark, or that it might somehow jinx your good luck? Or that it just takes too much mental energy? Say that objection clearly to yourself. Now try arguing against it from the Stoic perspective we just went through. If your objection is about negativity, remind yourself of the focus on control. If it's about attracting trouble, remember the pilot reviewing procedures. If it's about time, think about the 5 minutes it might save you from hours of future anxiety. This internal debate isn't a sign the practice is flawed. It's a sign of a mind engaging deeply, and that engagement is where real understanding starts. We see warnings everywhere, constant alerts, global events, economic fears, social division. This isn't the Stoic exercise, it's the opposite. It's a machine for catastrophizing, and catastrophizing is that emotional spiral. It locks onto the worst possible outcome, usually something far beyond any real probability, far beyond anything we control. It's passive, it consumes you, it leaves you feeling drained, powerless. The Stoic practice is different. It's deliberate, rational, brief, and it always ends by focusing on what you can actually do. One is a storm you're lost in, the other is a map you draw yourself. Epictetus had a line for this. He said, "Don't be disturbed by the news, don't let the chatter of the world dictate your peace." He wasn't saying to be ignorant, he was teaching discernment. All those alarming headlines, the doom scrolling from one crisis to the next, those are externals. They're not up to us. To let them hijack your emotions is to hand over your control to an algorithm built on fear. The Stoic asks a different question. With all this noise, what piece of it, if any, means I need to change what I do today? If the answer is nothing, then the wise move is to turn your attention back to the ground under your own feet. That makes curating your information a modern discipline. It's not about building a bubble, it's about building a filter. A filter for relevance. Are you consuming information to understand something you can influence, or are you just feeding an anxiety you can't resolve? The difference is everything. It's like the difference between someone reading a local council report because they're going to a meeting and someone endlessly refreshing a global disaster feed, feeling dread about events on another continent. Both might be called staying informed, but only one connects to action, virtuous action. Think about 2 evenings. In the first, you spend half an hour before bed scrolling. Alarming news, political instability, climate reports, the personal crises of strangers. Your heart rate goes up. Your mind jumps from one catastrophic what-if to the next. You feel a vague, global anxiety. You go to bed restless. That's catastrophizing. Now the second evening, you close those apps after 5 minutes. You see a headline about a local issue. A coming storm, maybe, a community debate. You spend 5 minutes in that Stoic exercise. You think, if this storm knocks out power here, how will I help? I'll check on my elderly neighbor. I'll gather flashlights. I'll share what I have. I'll stay calm for my family. You took the same stimulus, a potential problem, and you turned it from a source of diffuse fear into a plan. A plan for local action. One practice scatters your energy, the other pulls it together. So here's something to try. This week, notice one time you catch yourself doom scrolling. Falling into that spiral, it might be a habitual check of a site or getting lost in the comments. The moment you notice, pause, close the tab, put the phone down. Set a timer for 2 minutes. In those 2 minutes, do that exercise on one single, personal concern you can actually influence. A difficult email you need to send. A household task you've avoided, a small kindness you want to offer. Walk through it calmly. Focus on your own best response. This small act does 2 things. It breaks the cycle of passive fear, and it builds your muscle for calm, prepared calm. You take your attention back from the chaotic world outside, and you put it into the orderly world you can control. Leadership is tested in crisis. The best leaders, they don't wait for the storm. They've already sailed through it in their minds. That mental rehearsal, it's called Premeditatio Malorum. And it becomes a cornerstone of ethical leadership. It's what separates a reaction from a response. A reactive leader gets tossed by the waves, by panic, by public opinion, by immediate fear. But a leader who's practiced foresight, they stand on a steadier deck. They can see past the initial shock of a problem. They can see the secondary effects, the tertiary effects. They can ask, if we make this decision today to contain the crisis, what unintended consequence might it create next week? This foresight isn't magical. It's built through a quiet, disciplined practice, walking through difficulty before it arrives. It allows a leader to make decisions rooted in principle, not in the heat of the moment. To lead from virtue, not from fear. Marcus Aurelius used his journal for this. He was perhaps history's most documented leader-philosopher. He didn't write as a man above it all. He wrote as a man immersed in the daily grind of empire. He reminded himself to expect the Senate to be difficult, to expect people to be forgetful, ungrateful, even dishonest. This wasn't cynicism, it was clearing the emotional decks. By anticipating these frictions, he prevented them from surprising him. They couldn't surprise him into anger or resentment. He could then meet those behaviors with the virtue he chose, with justice, with patience, with a commitment to the common good. His leadership wasn't about his feelings. It was about his duty, and that duty was performed with a clearer mind because he had rehearsed the obstacles to performing it well. Consider a modern executive facing a product recall. Every company's nightmare scenario, the reactive path is paved with panic, a rush to blame the supplier, a legal team crafting defensive statements, a leadership team hiding behind jargon. The leader who's practiced Stoic foresight approaches it differently. Long before any alarm sounds, they have sat with the possibility. They've mentally walked through the discovery of a flaw. In that rehearsal, they didn't focus on the stock price dip or the headlines. They focused on their own conduct. They rehearsed immediate, transparent communication to the public, taking full responsibility. They rehearsed mobilizing the entire company around a single virtuous mission: customer care and safety. They rehearsed the calm, factual briefing to their team, outlining the steps for remediation and process improvement, not for finding a scapegoat. When the real crisis hits, this leader isn't improvising ethics. They are enacting a script they wrote in advance for their own character. This calm, principled center becomes a beacon for the entire organization. It inspires confidence not because the leader has all the answers, but because they demonstrate unwavering clarity on how to find them. With integrity, this applies far beyond the corporate suite. Any role that involves guiding others benefits from this foresight. A parent leading a family through a move to a new city rehearses how to address their children's fears. With patience and optimism, a project manager rehearses how to keep their team focused and collaborative if a key deadline becomes impossible. A community organizer rehearses how to maintain respectful dialogue when a meeting becomes heated. In each case, the leader's mental preparation creates a container for the group's anxiety. It says we have a plan, and that plan is built on our shared values. So if you hold any leadership role, large or small, consider this. Identify one potential challenge your group might face in the coming months. It could be a financial shortfall for a volunteer board, a conflict of personalities on a team, or a logistical hurdle for an event you're organizing. Now take 5 minutes for that Stoic rehearsal. Don't dwell on the problem itself. Walk through your own calm, virtuous response as the leader. How will you communicate with clarity and honesty? How will you model the fairness and focus you want to see in others? How will you turn the obstacle into a project that brings the group together rather than pulling it apart? That rehearsal doesn't just prepare you. It begins to shape the character of your leadership from the inside out. If it feels like too much, start with this, the simplest form of Premeditatio Malorum. Forget the long exercises. There's just one sentence, one question. Each morning, ask, what's one thing that could go wrong today, and how will I meet it with courage and wisdom? That's the whole practice. It takes a minute. The power is in the constraint. You pick one plausible challenge, not a disaster, something ordinary, and you don't just name the problem, you script your response. You focus on the choice you'll make. That's the Stoic core. The event is external. Your reaction is your own. This simple formula forces you to see that line. To see where your power actually begins. The ancient teachers had a shorthand for this. Epictetus said 2 words, bear and forbear, endure and refrain. It's a mantra for your inner stance. When the difficulty comes, bear it with resilience and forbear from the vicious reaction, the complaint, the resentment. Your one-sentence plan is a translation of that. How will I bear this? How will I forbear from making it worse? So make it mundane. Today, my commute could have terrible traffic. That's the external event. My chosen response is this. I will listen to an interesting podcast and practice patience. I will remember that my anger won't clear the road. It will only cloud my mind. Or today, I might get some critical feedback on my work. My chosen response. I will listen first. I will look for one useful piece of advice before I defend myself. I will choose curiosity over defensiveness. Or today, I might feel overwhelmed by my to-do list. My chosen response. I will pick the one most important task. I will do it first with full focus for 25 minutes. I will choose purposeful action over frantic multitasking. The beauty is in the specificity. You're not worrying about everything, you're preparing for one thing, and in that preparation, you're doing something profound. You're wiring your brain to default to agency. To choice, when that specific trigger arrives, your mind has a pre-loaded script. Not a script of what will happen to you, but a script of who you'll choose to be in that moment. So here's the invitation. Tomorrow morning, in your first quiet moment, try this one-sentence practice. Ask the question, what's one thing that could go wrong today? Pick something simple, real, then complete the sentence. How will I choose to meet it with courage and wisdom? Hold that answer in your mind for a moment. Then go about your day and observe. When that potential challenge arises, or even if it doesn't, notice if there's any shift, a slight softening of anxiety. A quicker return to calm, a feeling that you're navigating your day, not being dragged by it. That small shift is the beginning. It's the first stone placed in the foundation. Here's something I've noticed. If you spend time mentally preparing for real disaster, you start to laugh more at the small stuff. It sounds backwards, but it happens. You walk through the possibility of a crisis in your mind. A true crisis, losing your job, a health scare, a deep personal conflict. You face it calmly in the quiet of your thoughts. And then, against that backdrop, a spilled coffee or a traffic jam, it just loses its power. It's revealed. It's a tiny blip, fleeting. You don't become indifferent to your day. You gain perspective, and from that perspective, a lightness emerges. You can shrug. You can smile at the absurdity of getting so worked up over something so small. The Stoics understood this. It's a form of emotional freedom. They weren't aiming for a joyless existence. They aimed for serenity, a cheerful demeanor. A peace that wasn't so fragile, a peace that couldn't be shattered by a rude comment or a delayed package. Seneca wrote about cultivating a calm mind. A steady mind, one that meets all of life's events with evenness, and that evenness isn't a flat line, it's stable ground. It's the ground from which genuine humor can spring. Not cruel humor, the kind that recognizes the comedy in human frailty. In life's constant little surprises, you can apply this directly. Take a common, trivial fear. Social embarrassment, the worry of saying the wrong thing, having food on your face, tripping in public. It can feel so heavy in the moment. Now use the exercise on it. Seriously, sit and consider the absolute worst-case scenario. You tell a joke, it falls completely flat. An awkward silence follows. Walk through it. What then? Does the world end? Do your closest relationships vanish? Does your fundamental worth evaporate? Of course not. You might feel a flush of embarrassment. That's a normal human feeling, and then life continues. By rehearsing this tiny catastrophe, you disarm it. You see its true size, and when you walk into a social gathering with that understanding, something shifts. You approach with more ease, you're less self-conscious, you might even laugh at your own minor flubs because you've already seen the playbook. You know the stakes are comically low. The situation hasn't changed, but your gravity within it has. So try this playful reflection. Think back to a minor annoyance from just this past week. A long line at the store, a computer glitch right before you saved a document, a rainy day that spoiled a plan. Now picture this, you have just survived a metaphorical shipwreck. You swam to shore, you built a shelter, you're safe, you're alive, you're fundamentally okay. Looking back from that imagined place of resilience, how do you view that original annoyance? It likely shrinks to almost nothing. It becomes a footnote, not a headline. That shift in perspective is the gift of the practice. It doesn't make the small stuff disappear. It just makes it incredibly hard to take seriously. And when you stop taking the small stuff so seriously, you find a lot more room for a lighter step. A quicker smile, a much more enjoyable journey. It's not just about bracing for storms, it's about building an inner citadel. That's the Stoic goal, a citadel, that's a fortress inside a city. A final stronghold, and for the Stoics that's your character, built over time through practices like this mental rehearsal. The walls are your judgments. The foundation is your commitment to virtue. Outside, the world rages, events happen, loss, conflict, change, all the things you can't control. They can batter the gates. They can shake the ground, but inside, something stays untouched. Your capacity for choice, your moral compass, your peace, that core self can't be reached by any outside event. That's their definition of freedom, not freedom from what happens, but from being controlled by what happens. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this retreat. He said people look for retreats in the country, by the sea, but you can retreat into your own mind anytime. Nowhere, he wrote, is more peaceful than your own soul. A tranquil inner stronghold, that's the citadel. It's always there. You just have to learn the path back to its gates, and the daily practice, the mental rehearsal, that's the path. It's walking back inside, checking your defenses, strengthening them. Think of two people facing the same disaster, say a financial collapse, bankruptcy. The first person built their identity entirely on wealth, status, possessions. Their sense of self is in a mansion made of glass. When the storm hits, the mansion shatters. There's no inner structure left. They're in the rubble, feeling ruined, with no idea who they are without those external things. The second person has a different architecture. They valued their work, their comfort, sure, but they also practiced this foresight. They knew, intellectually and emotionally, that their worth wasn't their net worth. Their inner citadel was built on different materials: integrity, love for family, curiosity about life, resilience proven in smaller challenges. When the same financial storm hits them, it's devastating. It's a real loss, but it batters the outside of their citadel. Inside, the core self remains. They're shaken but not destroyed, grieving but not lost. Almost immediately from that inner calm, they start asking practical questions. What can I salvage? What skills do I still have? How can I care for the people who depend on me? They're already planning a new foundation because the old one was never the only thing holding them up. That's the shift from being a leaf tossed in the wind to being the tree with deep roots. The wind might strip your leaves, your external circumstances, but you remain standing. Your growth continues. Your purpose gets redefined from within, not dictated from without. So here's a prompt just for reflection. In a few quiet words, what's the foundation of your own inner citadel? What are its core materials? Is it integrity? A deep love for your people, curiosity, a sense of duty, faith in your capacity to learn? Name it, just to yourself. That act of naming, that's the first conscious step of construction. It turns an abstract ideal into a personal blueprint. And from that blueprint, every act of mental preparation, every choice for virtue, adds another stone to the wall. We started with a phone call, a simple idea, the Stoic practice of Premeditatio Malorum. We defined it as a kind of strategic optimism. Then we looked at how it works psychologically. The steps you take and the goal, which is to build an inner citadel. This isn't some ancient relic. It's a proactive strategy for modern resilience. It's a way to take the energy of fear and turn it into the architecture of preparation, to turn potential suffering into a source of strength. It asks you to meet life not with a flinch, but with a steady gaze. Seneca captured this. He wrote that the wise person is prepared for all of fortune's attacks, not by hoping they never come, but by having already considered them. And by having found their own strength waiting inside. That's the gift this practice offers. It's not a guarantee of calm seas. It's the skill to sail in any weather. Your journey with it starts exactly where you are, with that beginner's practice from earlier, that single question each morning. What's one thing that could go wrong today? And how will I meet it with courage and wisdom? Start there. Be patient with yourself. This is a skill, and like any skill, it grows with consistent, gentle effort. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. In the comments, share which part of this practice resonated most, or what one small step you plan to try this week. If you found this guide valuable, consider subscribing. It's a way to join a community dedicated to this same quiet work, building unshakable character. One thoughtful step at a time. Thank you for watching.